From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over the land, all the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing there heard this, they said, he's calling Elijah. Immediately, one of them ran and got a sponge and filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him.
And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. And at that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. And they came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people.
You guys can have a seat for a moment. We've been, as a church, going through the book of Matthew for the last year and 2 months, coming to the end of it. And I want to just take a moment to talk about the passage that Dan and Cindy just read from. In verse 50 of chapter 27, Matthew said, and he cried out, Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. And when that happened, Matthew goes on to detail a few things that transpire, a few things that make it no ordinary death. A few things that Matthew notates. He wants us to know this was different. And it was evident that this was different the moment Jesus yielded up his spirit. There's 4 things that stood out to me as I looked at that passage, 4 things that I think point to the end when Jesus returns, the end of the age, when all things are made new. 4 things that happened in the moment he died that point to and foreshadow the ultimate renewal of all things. 4 things that make the saddest day in history good. 4 things, briefly. Number 1. When he died, when Jesus gave up his spirit, it says that we gained access to God's presence. That was number 1. Look at verse 51. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The temple in Jerusalem, where the people of God came to get close to God's presence. The temple was where God dwelt with humanity. And in the Holy of Holies, people could not go. Ordinary sinners like you and me could not enter the Holy of Holies. And there was a curtain, different from this curtain, but picture like this curtain up here, blocking people like me from getting into the Holy of Holies. And only the high priest could go in there. He couldn't go all the time. He couldn't go casually. Sacrifices had to be made for people to have access to the presence of God. Not because God didn't love us, but we're sinful human beings. Don't have access to his presence on our own. Just like my dog, if she rolls in mud, my wife won't let her in the house as much as she loves her. She's got to be washed. And in that moment when Jesus yielded up his spirit, he paid the price so that when you and I call on him, when you and I place our trust in him, the Bible says that we're washed. And then we get to go into the Holy of Holies. Not in a physical temple, but every day. Every moment, we have access to God. So me, a sinful human being, I still got, residue of a dirty dog, right, in my heart, like all of us do. And I have things that I do, and I wake up the next morning, I go, oh, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Why did I think like that? Why did I have that attitude? But then God is faithful to remind me, I paid that price so that even you can go into the presence of God I have access. I get to call the God of the universe Father, Dad. And so do you, through faith in Jesus, because of what he did. That's number one. That's number one. And it points to, by the way, the ultimate day when Jesus returns and he makes all things new. It says God will dwell with us. There will be no need for a son because God will be our son. So as much as we get access to him now, we're going to have ultimate access to him on that day. Number two, it says that creation groaned for its creator. Look what it said. And the earth shook, and the rocks split. There was an earthquake. Rocks split open. It wasn't just that something happened in the spiritual realm where our souls get access to God. It was that something happened in the material world that would never be the same again. It's as if God was saying, this world, this creation will never be the same. Why? Because its creator paid the price for creation to be made new one day. Paul said in Romans chapter 8, this stopped working, guys. Verse 22, Paul said, we know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Paul's pointing out the fact that this world isn't the way it's supposed to be. There's tornadoes and earthquakes and floods that kill people. Animals don't get along the way they're supposed to get along. They don't get along with humans the way they're supposed to get along with humans. And on the day Jesus died, God shook creation. There was earthquakes. Historians actually testify about that. Rocks split open. And Paul says it's groaning. That was a hint and a foretaste of the day when a new earth is brought forth. The pains of childbirth are not like the pains of a stomach flu, right? Stomach flu doesn't give way to something good. The pains of childbirth gives way to something new. And so this earth is groaning, and it's longing, and it's mourning, but it's looking forward to the day when it's made new because Jesus paid the price, because the Creator died for his creation. And so I want to urge you, when you see a rainstorm, thunder, lightning, when the stuff that's scary is happening out there, remember, it's groaning, but it's not groaning towards futility. It's groaning towards a day when all things will be fixed. And you and I, if we're trusting in Jesus, we get to reign with him on that new earth. He paid for it that day. That's number two. Number three, dead people came back to life. Only Matthew mentions this. Matthew's writing to a Jewish audience primarily, and Matthew mentions this, that verse 52, when Jesus breathed his last and the tombs broke open, the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many. So when Jesus rose a few days later, other people showed up in Jerusalem, and their family members were like, Uncle Joe? Like, what? What happened? Didn't we bury you last summer? I don't know. I woke up in a tomb. Matthew's saying that happened. People showed up. Now, they would die again. They didn't raise to life in resurrected bodies like Jesus did. They came back to life and then died, much like the people that Jesus rose, like Lazarus and a few others in his ministry. But Matthew is saying that was a foretaste, a picture of what's going to happen at the end of time when Jesus returns. You and I, who've trusted in him, are going to get new bodies. But Matthew puts this not in chapter 28 when Jesus rises. He puts this with Jesus' death, because Matthew's saying that's going to happen. We get to rise. We get to rise in new bodies because Jesus paid the price. And the way he writes this, it's like Jesus dies like a seesaw. Jesus dies, and up came these people walking into Jerusalem. And Matthew's saying that's what's going to happen one day. He's going to return, and up is going to come you and I who've trusted in Jesus in new bodies that will never die. And so when you feel the aches and the pains, and when you're asking someone to pray for you for healing, and God does heal, and he brings up these movie trailers and these hints and foretastes of our future bodies, he brings it to us in healing ways. But when we need the healing, it's a reminder, wait a second. One day, I'm getting new bodies. We all do, because Jesus died. He paid the price. And lastly, number 4, hard hearts confessed that Jesus is Lord. Verse 54, when the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were filled with awe and said, truly this was the Son of God. Now the centurion, he's the one in charge. He's the one who's in charge of making sure that Jesus is dead. That everybody who's crucified dies. He is trained killer. He's seen many people die. But there was something about the way Jesus died. There was something about the way Jesus died that moved him. It wasn't just that creation shook. His heart shook. It wasn't just that stones on the outside split open. His cold, stony heart split open. And he said, man, that's got to be the Son of God. That's got to be the Son of God. And Matthew's writing, and he's one of the first non-Jews, an outsider whose heart's cold and stony. He's one of the first to recognize and confess that Jesus is who he claimed to be. And I think it's another foretaste, another foreshadow of how the gospel goes forth to the ends of the earth, and all kinds of outsiders from every nation, tribe, and tongue are going to confess that Jesus is Lord. Every nation, tribe, and tongue. There's going to be people from all over the world who are gathered together when Jesus returns to worship him and live with him forever. Even some of your family members and friends whose hearts are cold and hard right now. The centurion confessed because he recognized. And for some of you guys, I pray, your family members and friends that you're burdened for, Jesus can do it. He can open eyes. He can soften hearts so that they can see that that cross where Jesus died wasn't just generally for the whole world. It was for them. It was for your brother, your sister, your neighbor, your friend. And that they could bow their knee like the centurion and go, wow. My heart was cold and stony at one point myself, and he broke it open and softened it. So those are 4 things that I want us to consider. Access to God is made available because Jesus died. We get it. Creation will be freed from its brokenness, and we're going to get to experience it. Resurrection life is available. And we'll get new bodies, and hard hearts from every nation, tribe, and tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. What we're going to do right now is we're going to transition to this station over here. There's a cross on the stage. It's going to be put down on a table from our ushers. Because of a play happening in here right now, we are going to be a little crowded over here. Bear with us. But as the band sings some more songs, we're going to kind of make our way down here. There are red Post-it notes and pens along the stage. So you can come to the stage and you can write on those Post-it notes. And then you can make your way to the cross, and there's hammers and nails. You can go to either side of the table. So there can be 6 at a time. And you can nail that Post-it note to the cross. Now, what are you writing on the Post-it note? Well, if you're like me, you have moments where you're tempted to think that something you did, something you said, makes you unworthy to get into God's presence. If you're like me and you've got some habits that still need to break, that tempt you to think, well, maybe God's upset with me or God doesn't want to hear my prayers right now, you're going to nail that to the cross because Jesus paid for that. So whether it's an addiction, whether it's one-time thing that you did in your past, maybe it's just something from this past week. We have had things on those Post-it notes ranging from I yelled at my brother to I had an abortion. All kinds of things. All kinds of things that Jesus paid for. Jesus paid so that the price for their forgiveness of those things can be paid for, and he died so that the power that those things have over us can be broken, shame washed away. So whatever it is, you write it down and you nail it to the cross. And nailing that to the cross is a declaration. I'm trusting that he paid for this.